Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
joining today's discussion. We'll just hold for a minute as folks are joining our webinar. But you're welcome once you join to open the chat function and say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from. All right, I still see some folks joining, and I see we are joined by folks from Michigan, New York, Colorado, Hawaii, London, Connecticut. I think I might have just seen Austria. So exciting to have this conversation happening all over the US, all over the world. Um, and we hope you'll engage throughout our discussion with the conversation using the chat. Uh, All right. I see Belize and Nigeria have entered the room. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and we're grateful for you to be part of this discussion. So you are joining the webinar hosted by the Pulitzer Center, reporting Iran, hopes, fears, and what happens when the bombing campaign ends. We are in a Zoom webinar, so just so you know, it's a little different if you than other Zooms you might have been in. We are still able to connect with each other. The ways to do that are through the chat. You can use that chat button to communicate with us. One of our colleagues is monitoring the chat, helping to share great insights with everyone. So please use that. There should also be a button at the bottom of your screen that looks like this screenshot for Q&A. That's also a space where you can ask questions, let us know if you're having any technical issues, but also to ask questions of our panelists. Today's session is being hosted by the Pulitzer Center. The Pulitzer Center is a nonprofit organization where our mission is to champion the power of stories to make complex issues relevant and inspire action. And we're proud to do this work through sponsorship and support of breakthrough journalism, audience engagement that helps that journalism then reach audiences that may not have seen it when the stories were published, and through game-changing resources that facilitate this ecosystem. And we do this work because we believe that people and communities who actively engage with systemic challenges will find solutions together. My name is Fareed Mostofi, and I'm part of the audience engagement team here at the Pulitzer Center. And I'm excited to be on the back end, primarily supporting you all with your questions and your feedback throughout the conversation. But I'm about to turn the floor over to our guests who will take us through this discussion. And we'll start with my colleague, Tom Hundley from our editorial team. Tom will be moderating today's discussion and will introduce our panelists. And you can see on the screen here a little bit of what we have planned. Tom, I'll pass it to you to take us into our next section, our moderated conversation. Thank you all for being here.
Hey, thank you, Fareed, and thank you and welcome to everyone joining us in this webinar today. We're calling our program Reporting Iran, Hopes, Fears, and What Happens When the Bombing Campaign Ends. Uh, Let me start by first introducing our panel. Uh, we have Elahe Esmaili. She is an award-winning Iranian filmmaker now based in London. Her work has been recognized by the Critics' Choice Awards, the International Documentary Association, Best International Short Hot Docs, and the Sheffield Doc Fest 2023. Elahe's projects have been supported by the International Documentary Association and One World Media and have been broadcast and streamed across various platforms. The project she did with the support of the Pulitzer Center was a short feature doc for the New York Times op docs called A Move, which is an intimate look at family dynamics as they play out against ever present domestic political tensions in Iran. Next, we have Nahal Toosi. Nahal is Politico senior foreign affairs correspondent. She has reported on war, genocide, political chaos, and a career that has taken her around the world. In 2019, Nahal was a finalist for the National Magazine Award for her story on the plight of Rohingya Muslims in Bangladesh and Myanmar. She joined Politico from the Associated Press, where she reported from or served as editor in New York, Islamabad, Kabul, and London. She was one of the first correspondents to reach Abbottabad in Pakistan after the killing of Osama bin Laden. And prior to joining the AP, Nahal worked for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. She is Iranian American and joins us today from Washington. And finally, we have Andy Sarjahani. Andy is an Iranian American documentary filmmaker and cinematographer who was raised in the Ozarks. His work focuses on human ecology, climate change adaptation, threats to democracy, masculinity, and nuance within the American South. He has worked as a documentary cinematographer for Vice, for Al Jazeera, Story Syndicate, and PBS. His personal work has been supported by the Pulitzer Center, the New Yorker, the Center for Asian American Media, Doc NYC, the New Orleans Film Society, the Southern Documentary Fund, Real South, and PBS. His project with the Pulitzer Center was an animated short doc for the New Yorker called The Smallest Power, and he joins us today from New Orleans. So, if you've been following the news from Iran, you've heard quite a bit about the Trump administration's ever-changing rationale for going to war. Regime change, ending Iran's nuclear ambitions, wiping out its missile program. Also, various thoughts on when and how it might end. You've also heard a lot about the Strait of Hormuz and oil prices. We haven't heard much about the Iranian people, both inside the country and in the diaspora, and that's what I'd like to get at today. If you'll forgive the cliche, the Iranian people, both inside and outside the country, have been between a rock and a hard place. For 47 years, they've had to put up with a tyrannical theocracy that earlier this year killed somewhere between 6,000 and 30,000 of its own citizens. And now they are being bombed relentlessly by the US and Israel. So I'd like to ask our panelists to talk about the hopes and fears of Iranians inside and outside the country and how they think this thing ends and what comes after. But first, to give everyone a sense of everyday Iranians in Iran, I want to show a couple of 3-minute excerpts from the short documentaries produced by Andy and Elahe. First, from Andy's short doc for The New Yorker, The Smallest Power, which captures the power of an individual act of resistance amid the chaos of nationwide disorder.
At his place, and they were trying to take him away, and due to a lot of stress, he had a minor heart attack. That's why he ended up in the hospital. The only thing he did wrong was wearing the black wristband to show his respect for the death of Mahsa Amini. At that moment, I just felt I had to do something. All the doctors and nurses and residents at the hospital started to build, and we all started sitting on the floor so they couldn't roll him out. We were committed not to letting those guards take him away. because he was one of us and we looked up to him. We could have lost everything. We could have been arrested, beaten, kicked out of school, or anything else. All of us tried to cover our hair the best way we could so they couldn't recognize us. After several hours, the police finally left, and the resident was not taken. This is the only thing I could do. I don't have the power to do anything about a child being killed in another city. But I have yet the smallest power. I spent most of my life just dreaming of escaping this regime. But since this all began, all I can think about is how much I want this country to be free and how much I want to stay.
You can view the film in its entirety on our website, pulitzercenter.org. Next is Elahe's New York Times op-doc, A Move. Elahe grew up in a household where women were expected to wear the hijab. There came a point in her life where she decided not to. In this excerpt, you will see how, quote, resistance rooted in love and respect can lead to understanding, how there is room for disagreement and nuance without violent confrontation or alienation from the other side.
اینجا اصلا موبایل آنتن نمیده ها.
ما گفتیم 8:30 یه رو به 11 ما اونجاییم ان شاء الله.
گفتم هر کار میخوای بکنی.
صبح ساعت 8:30 زنگ زد که ما سر جاده کاهو.
الهه کلاور نداد. الهه کلاور نده شما. نه کلا بذار سری دیگه با تو حسین دیگه اصلا خود نکن دیگه.
ندارم عشقم.
نه خب بذار یه کلا. یه کلا بذار کلا.
ندارم عشقم.
چرا برای چی داشتی سرمه‌ای داشتی؟
نمیپوشم دیگه کلا مولا تموم شد.
بی خود گفتی
کلا مولا مال قبل انقلاب بود.
کلا تو بزن دیگه مومانی. حسین الان یکی بزن.
خود حسین اصلا هیچی نمیگه.
به خدا یک امتحان آماده کن برای خودت حسین. فکر می‌کنی؟
حالا بگه با هم دیگه صحبت میکنیم. چی میشه مگه؟ با هم صحبت کنیم
میریم باغ حسین باید
با هم صحبت میکنیم ببینیم
یک کلا میذاشتی. چی؟
با حسین ما هم به توافق میرسیم.
خب حالا کلا داشت.
اگه همه مردای اونجا رو سرشون کردن بعد من اثرم میکنم. چی؟
این منم جوش ندی هرس ندی.
برای چه هرس بدم؟
نه کلا بگسی سرم نه.
کلا برای چی بزنم سرم دیگه؟
برای که حالا یه جواب تایی سر دیده نشه.
یعنی اونا نمیدونن من کلا سرم نمیذارم، حجاب سرم نمیذارم؟
نه ندیدن تو رو.
حالا ببینن دیگه، الان وقتش ببینن.
آقای اسماعیلی من میخوام در نکنم که بچه خوبی تحویل بده. اونجا مرزی اونا همه مکتب نرجس درس بده.
مرزی خانوم ها؟
مرزی خانوم نه منصورش. چیزای مکتب نرجس همش. راد نمیده. میگه برو اول یک چیز تر کن بعد
حالا بریم ببینیم. من تنم نمیکنم، بگه نه میگم باشه حالا. چیزی ندارم میخوام تنم کنم.
یه کلاه امیر بذار سره. امیر کلاهتو بدی به الهه. یادت نه هم دم ورودی بده
اینجا. من کلا بیا بغلم من کلا سرم نمیکنم، قربونت برم.
خب حالا اونجا سرت کن.
Again, you can watch the whole short documentary on our website. So all of you have friends and family members in Iran. Stressful for you, I'm sure, even more stressful for them. There's an internet blackout. Communications are difficult, if not impossible. Can you each talk a little about what you've experienced in these past 4 weeks and what you've heard from inside Iran? Nahal, maybe you go first. Tell us what you've heard from friends and family and other sources of information about what's happening in Iran and maybe where you think public opinion is heading.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. In terms of what I've heard, it's not been a lot because it's very hard to get through to people in Iran. The internet is largely cut off. My family, it's mainly cousins and aunts and uncles, and they, I think we managed to get through once for like a minute, and they told us everyone was fine. My aunt had her hip broken a few weeks before the war began, and by the grace of God, we managed to get her out of Tehran. So she's not in the city, which means she's in a somewhat safer place now. But it's been weirdly stressful. And yes, for me as a journalist who's been covering this from the policy side, it's been like I'd known this was coming. And I've been trying to be an objective journalist, but also keep it my family in mind, and it's been just a very, very odd thing. I'll give you one example. Like I was working on a Iran related story, and in the run up, and I just got really paranoid, and I asked through another cousin, I asked all my family in Iran to make sure to delete my number from their phones in case something happened, and the Iranians connected me, a journalist in Washington, to them, and it's been weird. So it's very strange. And from what I can gather, just, very quickly, like there's a lot of mixed opinions within Iran about how this is going. But a lot of people want to see the regime fall, but a lot of people right now are just trying to survive day to day. And no one knows how this is going to end. But no, I don't get the sense that there's enough that enough people are able to get over their fear to go out into the streets and stand against the besieged or other groups to take down the regime while the bombs are falling.
Yeah, I definitely want to get back to that. Elahe, what are your impressions?
So hello everyone first, and thank you for having us and holding this session. I think this is really important these days to talk about all the details. So for me, all my family are in Iran. Like I'm the single one outside of Iran, and you can imagine how stressful it could be that you just keep hearing news of bombardments here and there in your city, in your street. Like, for example, that huge fire in Tehran, which was the oil depot, like the biggest one that it took 3 days to like handle it. That was like the next street to my home. It is unbelievable how you feel when you hear those and you don't have access to your family and to your friends to just see if they survived it, you know, like as simple as that. We don't even expect much, just to know that they're safe and they were not affected by that attack or this. So it is a really difficult situation for me because my family, like you just saw my mom in the film, like she's in her mid 70s. She cannot really do much with her phone, with all of these, like even the younger generations can't do anything, so let alone the older ones. So I haven't been able to talk to them at all during this almost 4 weeks now. And it's so like I was even like crying last night before going to bed because 4 weeks nothing, I had nothing from my family. And then yesterday I was in the metro and a message popped up on my phone that was my brother on a weird like application that no one uses in the world but Iranian, because that's the only one that's not filtered in Iran. And he somehow managed to get one VPN that worked, and he had 1 gigabyte bandwidth, and he just got, and his message was like, hello, can you hear me? I'm just testing if it's working. And I like literally stopped. I was like, okay, I need to get off the train and see if I can get a signal, because you don't have usually a stable signal in the metros in London. So I got off and just tried to text him and see like, how's it going? Like last night was the first time that I could talk to my family, and he immediately, when he realized that his VPN is working, he called my sisters, my nieces, everyone to go there so they can video call me, because it was just 1 gigabyte of bandwidth, and like it's like they had to be all together so they can video call me. I mean, let's not go even there, that the video call was just some pixels of my family. Even hearing their voice was a gift for me. And I mean, this is just the level of stress on a personal level, what we're going through these days. And although I know that my family are in a city that's least of interest for Israel and United States to attack, like it's not, my family are not in Tehran now. I knew that most probably they're fine, but still, like it becomes sometimes unbearable to manage. Yeah.
It's stressful. I'm glad you had this moment of communication.
Yeah.
Andy, you grew up in the American South, and we spoke earlier about possible splits and fractures within the diaspora community. What have you been experiencing?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this panel with Nahal and Elahe. I have a lot of respect for both of them and their body of work. And as you mentioned, yes, I grew up in the American South, in a very rural part of Arkansas. And so I have a very different experience probably from a lot of Iranians. There are not many Iranians you'll meet that talk like the way I talk. And much of my work and my adulthood has been about connecting with a side that's been in many ways walled off from me for much of my upbringing, for reasons beyond anyone within my family's control. And so attempting to connect with our family there, it's been, I echo Nahal and Elahe's experiences. It's been very spotty. It's been very intermittent. We haven't spoken to any family members directly. It's usually been one family member gets a VPN that they can get out for like a minute and a half, and I would just call them a dispatch, to let one family member that's living outside the country know, and that family member sort of does a relay to the rest of us that this sort of everyone there is okay. My dad's tried multiple times to reach his family directly, our family directly, to no, avail. I was just with him a few days ago filming for my film, Iranian Hillbilly, that someone asked about. And, he hasn't been able to speak to any of our family members directly now for today's day 25, I think, of the blackout in Iran. And so, yeah, it's extraordinarily stressful, and you're sort of just waiting for the next dispatch. And that seems to be one way we've been able to find connection is that a friend of mine that's within the States, she talked to her sister. She was able to get in touch with her sister for one of these dispatches, and her sister was able to call my family through a landline and then relay that to her on the next dispatch. And then she relayed that to me, and I relayed that to my dad and all my other family members. So yeah, it seems like there's a lot of overlap in our experience. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question correctly, but that's sort of what, yeah.
What are Iranians in the U.S. saying to each other?
I mean, it's incredibly fractured, you know. It's extraordinarily fractured. It's an extremely hot topic. Nahal has written some really wonderful pieces in Politico that I read coming into this talk, just about some of the, you know, touching on some of this. I think that there are, you know, the people. I can tell you this from, like, you know, my family's experience when we were last able to reach them before, you know, everything really got bad. This was like right around the time of the January 8th and 9th massacres from the Islamic Republic. They were living in sort of a dual fear. And that dual fear was their windows, you know, windows on their homes were all blown out during the 12-day war last summer. So there's this, obviously that's escalating, but then they also talk about, you know, when they go to the streets, there's blood on the sidewalks, there's blood on the roads, and that's from the Islamic Republic's mass murders of its own civilians. So they're living in this fear of bombs from, you know, the United States and Israel, and then they're living in a fear of mass murder from their own government. And that's sort of the experience of people that I have been able to, like, through dispatches and prior to the digital blackout. That's the experience I've been able to grasp. But, you know, within the United States, it's so fractured. There's a very vocal faction that, you know, supports, you know, the return of the monarchy, and Nahal wrote a really amazing piece in it in Politico that I would encourage everyone to read, that just talks about some of the complications associated with that, some of the dynamics associated with that. I would say one specific person that I've talked to, they immigrated not too long ago, and this was they came to the States a handful of years after the Green Revolution, and they, you know, sort of exasperated from that, you know, being beat down from that movement, and all of their immediate family is there. And this person, it's a couple, and one of them was just he just underwent chemo for cancer for the past 6 months. He just, on the day that the war started, this individual found out that they were cancer free, and the chemo worked. And the analogy they used was comparing the Islamic Republic to a cancer, and that no one is excited about chemo, and no one looks forward to it, but you sort of feel a sense of hopelessness and desperation, that it's like, what other choice do we have? And that was an interesting perspective that gave me a lot to think about.
Now, do you want to talk a little about your piece about Reza Pahlavi?
Sure. I mean, I think Andy did a really great job of discussing how fractured the diaspora is. Look, the thing about the Iranian diaspora is it's not just fractured, they're at each other's throats. I mean, this has been a years-long thing where there are different groups fighting one another. It, Even if you like support taking down the regime, people will say that you're pro-regime if you don't support sanctions, right? So it's just really been a poisonous and toxic swamp, to be really frank. And that's one of the reasons that the regime has managed to stay in power for so long, is because there's not a very united and disciplined opposition movement on the outside. Instead, they're all fighting each other. And you could also argue, probably fairly that the regime might be fueling a lot of this infighting. Now, in terms of Pahlavi, he's the former crown prince of Iran. He is now in his 60s, I believe. I think he's 65. Yeah. Um, and he has over, you know, nearly the whole revolution. He was in the US when the revolution happened. And so for like 47 years or so, he occasionally would pop up and say something about Iran. And then he would just fade away because he never really had an organization. Well, in the last few years, he adopted a very partisan and polarizing approach to the whole situation. He decided he would align himself with Republicans, with Israelis, with almost kind of the far right. He and his aides, or his aides in particular, but also many who support him, have gone after others in the diaspora and other opposition figures, basically insisting that everyone has to unite behind him, and that nothing else is going to work. And so they've even told people to walk away from the women life freedom movement and to abandon that idea because that is not, it's too woke. And they want to align themselves with a more stronger, I don't know, I'm not sure what the best word is, approach to taking on the regime. Now, so they've done this and they have managed, it has been actually a politically successful strategy. They've managed to gain support and they've gotten stations like Iran International and stuff have kind of come around. And a lot of people, even if they don't like the tactics that the Pahlavists are using, they don't see a better alternative than him. They feel like he's a figure who works, and they can rally behind him if it means taking down the regime. The big caveat here is he doesn't seem to have a ground game inside Iran. So within Iran, he doesn't really seem to have that much power. And so the Trump administration, which looks at this from a very different perspective, has not seen him as someone that they can go and just put in and, you know, assume that he will be safe. Frankly, if he lands in the airport in Tehran, they don't know if he's going to make it outside of the airport. So he has not managed to get into the good graces of President Trump, who has called him a nice guy. But if you're called nice by President Trump, that's usually like a kiss of death. So it's been really fascinating to watch these dynamics. I will say one other thing, though. What's interesting is it's not just Iranians who are going through these deep frustrations about these regimes that they cannot seem to take down, right? We have seen decades of these rising authoritarians who have become so much stronger and so much smarter about staying in power, right? And so it's not like it used to be where you could shame people, where you could, you know, use nonviolent resistance necessarily and feel confident that that will weaken the regime and it will fall. This, you know, this is going to be a thing. People who want to take down authoritarian systems are going to have to come up with some better tactics if they don't want to resort to military force. And as we're seeing, even military force doesn't necessarily mean a regime will fall.
Well, speaking of Donald Trump, in January, when Iranians took to the streets to protest the regime, Trump proclaimed that help is on the way. Do Iranians really think that the U.S. Cares about what happens to them? Maybe Elahe?
Yeah, I think so many people, I'm like just taking what just Nahal said and adding something to that. Like the TV that the former prince of Iran managed to get, which is the Iran International. I mean, that played a very important role in shaping people's mind inside Iran because they don't have access to so many, like because of the censorship, because of the national to the state TV inside Iran being so like the propaganda of the regime and the lack of access to many resources. That is one of the main resources that they get their news from and everything from, basically. And them aligning with Pahlavi, and then like I remember that was one of the most heartbreaking thing for me during the 12-day war, that they live streamed Benjamin Netanyahu talking to people of Iran about how he attacked Iran for Iranians. And like a TV doing that, I mean, I think some people started hating platform from them. But some people also believe that this is the only option, like out of desperation, because they had no other option, they accepted it, right? But I think what's changing now after 4 weeks of this war, for example, a friend of mine got online yesterday for a few minutes. He posted an image of her sister's house that was damaged the day before, and it's so sad as well, because like he posted that 10 minutes ago, I saw the picture. After 10 minutes, I messaged, oh my God, how are your family? How's your sister? And then he went offline again for like 10 hours and then got back online after. And during that 10 hours, I was like what has happened to my friends? Is that I knew them and I knew his sister. So people, and that was the caption with this. So he sent me this picture with this caption, either homeland or death. And these are the people who were brainwashed by these TV channels, like from months ago, since a few months ago that the 12-day war started, that this is the solution, like a war, an international interfere by Israel, like Israeli-led war that is going to be with the support of the states, is the way out, is the way to heaven, is going to save us. It's the key basically to get rid of this regime. But now what they're experiencing is that there's a war from the sky. They see bombs coming, like falling on them, but also the regime is on the street, still threatening people, still arresting people. Over the past 4 weeks, they kept arresting people, they kept executing people, and they're becoming even more, what's the word, like savage than they were before.
Repressive.
And they're becoming, yeah, exactly. And like they're, and this is what we expected even before the war. We knew that something like that would make them even more brutal on us, on their own people, right? Because especially because what happened, what started that some people started calling for that war, for Israel, for USA to come and help us, specifically starting from help is on the way, which is this. That's what he meant, like this help now is what he meant back in January. So I think, yeah, people are like, it's slightly shifting. There were like a bigger base in Iran that they thought that yes, this war will resolve things, but now they're seeing the reality of this war, and they're seeing it's not only saving them, but also making the regime even wilder than before, if that makes sense.
In your documentary, we heard the actual voice of this very brave woman who stood up, or actually sat down. Any sense that the U.S. administration actually cares about the fate of the Iranian people after this is over?
No, I don't think that's. Sorry, but that was for Andy. Yeah, sorry. You go, Andy.
Go ahead.
No, you go. I might add something afterwards. You go.
Okay. I mean, and honestly, Elahe's film dovetails really nicely with the film that you all share with The Smallest Power, because it is her own act of individual. It's about individual acts of resistance. And to answer your question, no, I don't think that that's the case. I don't think there is care for the individual Iranian civilian. I don't think there's individual care from them, from anyone in power. I don't get that sense at all. That's what motivates a lot of the work that I do. That's what is a driving force for me, because they are being held hostage by a murderous, regime, and they're also undergoing a bombing campaign that, to dovetail off of what Elahe just said, that the bombing campaigns, people only become increasingly fearful to go out into the streets amidst these bombing campaigns. They're also, the threat to bomb power infrastructure. I mean, that's only going to weaken any sort of resistance movement within the country. It's not going to help any civilian. Like just knowing that threats like that are on the table, like that tells me everything about, and civilians would be extraordinarily crippled with a war crime of that magnitude. And that is, and I think that, it's as we've sort of all said, there is a certain level of desperation of living under this regime, but that, the bombing campaigns only weaken the civilian resistance. And furthermore, as Elahe just said, it escalates any violence from the Islamic Republic regime towards their own civilians. There's an increased level of paranoia and just sort of like a caged animal with the back against the wall that like sort of they're it's a new level of viciousness. And yeah, I'll stop there and would love for Elahe to hear your thoughts.
No, yeah, you're right. And just another thing is that they're gonna use this that we've managed to save our people from this war. We've managed to protect our people, and they're gonna claim even, like it doesn't matter how it's gonna end. The regime is gonna say that we survived this war, so we deserve to be in power. This is just what they did, like back in the Iraq war. So we deserve to stay. And every opposition voice is gonna be oppressed even harsher than before, because this is the fact. We could survive this war, so we're gonna stay.
I think,
Yeah.
if I could just add to that, I think it's also like about regional and global power dynamics, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the regime, quote unquote, loses, which honestly, I don't know what that means anymore when they can control the Strait of Hormuz. But if they lose their ability to project power outward, if their ballistic missiles or nuclear program proxies are all decimated and destroyed, they, first of all, are going to be extremely conscious that they were betrayed from within somehow, right? But also they're gonna take stock and they're gonna want to make sure they're in charge at home, right? Before trying to rebuild and projecting power externally down the line, right? So first, when the dust settles, they're going to be like, we have to make sure we retain power at home because we don't want our people to think we are weak and they can take us down now. We have to exert that control. And then we can rebuild our proxies later and, build missiles and stuff down the line. So this is all, it's partly it's emotional, but partly it's also strategic.
Mm-hmm.
The regime they've absorbed the U.S. and Israel's best shot. They're weakened, but at the same time, they become more entrenched. Not a good situation.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Sorry,
the mistake people make sometimes is they think a regime is a person, but a regime is a mindset. It's an ideology. It's a system, right? And President Trump said the other day, I know we're not supposed to talk about him too much, but like he said, oh well, we have had regime change because it's all new people, but no, it's
that makes
it's
no
the same
sense. Yeah.
regime.
Yeah, it's the same regime and even the same people. It's not even the people within the regime who oppose the previous leadership. It's the same side, like with the people who he's talking about. It's not even the opposition within the regime. I mean, that's ridiculous, like what he's claiming. But can I just add something before we move to the next question, Tom?
Sure.
About what Andy said.
And then I think we want to open it to questions from our audience. But go ahead.
Okay. He nailed it. Like, there's no room for us on the street now to go and do our civil activism that we've been like. This war, I think, throw us back for decades in that regard as well. So we, like the civil society, the civil activists, we've, as you see in my film as well, like we pushed boundaries little by little over decades by our resistance, by our peaceful like strategies to fight that regime, who we all know how brutal they are, and we shed blood, we lost lives, we paid the price as well, but we managed to push these boundaries little by little. We managed to progress in what we wanted to achieve. But now, simply, we don't have a street to go fight. We don't have now that space. We don't have even internet connection to connect with each other and organize something within ourselves, and to do something, to do something more, like to do some sort of civil activism, I would say. So it's basically stopped everything, and I think that's such a shame, because we tried so hard over the past few decades to show the real face, the ugly face of this regime to the world. We tried to fight for a free Iran, but now we're all handcuffed and we're all imprisoned in our homes because there's bombs out there. And if ever this bombing stops and we go back to the streets trying to achieve something, we're going to be as quick as possible labeled, even as harsher than before. We're going to be labeled as anti-government, executed, arrested. That's increased the level of aggression by them, because now, you remember the last months there was a war, and now you're saying the same thing as they did. So we're going to be labeled as pro-war or pro-Israel or whatever. The first moment that you're going to say something against the Islamic Republic, you're going to be arrested.
But I mean, this is a very unfortunate setback. I think now we'll go to some questions from the audience. Fareed?
Yes, lots of great questions came in. We'll start with one from Lauren, who wrote, how would you assess the accuracy and framing of Iran-related coverage in American media, or we could say Western media? What context or voices do you feel are missing, and what steps could outlets take to improve their reporting?
I think that might be for you. You're on mute.
Oh, do you want me to go for that one?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Look, the media is a very big term. I actually don't like it. It doesn't really mean anything. There's a wide difference between what, CNN does and what Horse and Hound magazine does, if that still exists. Would I like to see more coverage of Iran? Sure. I mean, I'd like to see more coverage of people and countries all over the world. And do I think it's balanced? I think part of the challenge is it's very hard for Western journalists in particular to be based in Iran because a number of them have been held hostage, or it's just a difficult place to work. But people do everything they can to get the information that they can get out there, despite getting a lot of intense criticism, no matter what they write, frankly. So yeah, I mean, I think if you want to evaluate a media organization, in particular one about its coverage, it's worth looking at all of its coverage, right, about Iran, and saying, okay, not just kind of assuming that they didn't write about something. First, do the research, and you probably will realize, oh, they did write about that once. It was a couple of years ago. What would I personally like to see more of? Look, honestly, I feel like there's a lot of coverage of the Iranian people, believe it or not, and has been, and what they think. But I feel like a segment that hasn't gotten as much coverage are the Iranians who really do support the regime, like who genuinely are fervent believers, and I would just personally be curious as to why. Why have they stuck with this regime? What is it that drives them? I'm not saying by any means that should dominate the coverage, not at all. It's very rare to see a story about that particular group, the ones who do show up in the streets to support the regime. I'm just curious, what is their thinking? So that's my opinion.
Can I add something quick? I'll be real quick. I think, just to touch on what you just said, Nahal, that would be a community that have been brainwashed for years. And it's interesting to know, but that's all over the state media in Iran, and I wouldn't say that we need that to be shown in the international media as well, because there's so many voiceless people inside Iran that don't have access to even that state media. They have no platform to express their opinions. But the only thing that I would say for the Western media to go for, going back to the question, I would say just don't judge or don't assume that the people of Iran want what the diaspora, like the Iranian diaspora, wants. Like what you see here, especially because of the lack of the connection to the people inside, and we never had like a free election, so we simply just don't know what the majority of Iranian wants. But most importantly now is that don't let the diaspora dominate the space, and what they want is not necessarily what the people inside of Iran want. Yes, we have 3 million, estimations shows that we have around 3 million Iranian living abroad, but Iran has around 95 million population, and because of our regime, we have a different perspective to the Israel and Palestine stuff, to that war, to that genocide, because Islamic Republic has been always a pro-Palestine regime, and they used Iranian resources to fund Hamas and support Palestine. People have this anger towards the Palestinian, which comes from the anger that we have for the regime, and that's been there mistakenly. But like what you see in the world, that people are very like pro-Israel, that is not the reality of people's mind and people's heart inside of Iran. A part of that comes from that suppression, that hatred, that suppression that we experience with the Islamic Republic, and that hatred that we have towards them, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. A few questions came in related to context in history and how it connects to the moment that we're in. One attendee shared some resources related to Prime Minister Mossadegh as one example of maybe a part of history people are less aware of. And Lynetta shared, as an educator in the room, as someone who teaches young people to understand power, identity, and voice, I'm wondering, what stories about Iran are we getting wrong right now? And what would it take to tell them more truthfully? What sources or reporting would you trust teachers to bring into classrooms right now? But I bet even beyond teachers, others would appreciate resources that provide context. What do you guys recommend?
I mean, I would just share that, there's a scholar named Pardees Shefafi that has been doing some really incredible work just on the archives, and that's something I've recently been exposed to, and just the archives from I mean, this is like this is a very layered question, and I'm sure Elahe and Nahal have some really good thoughts on this, but for my little tidbit to add, I definitely think being familiar with the U.S. and Britain-backed coup of 1953 is really important, but Pardees Shefafi has been doing some really interesting work on the archives that the Islamic Republic has really like revised, like the revisionist history from the Islamic Republic and the way they've sort of like kept that guarded. So it's like there's sort of this mystique that's been sort of manufactured from the Islamic Republic that because they've sort of controlled the flow of information. But there are some really interesting, fascinating scholarly work being done to kind of connect the missing pieces there.
I would just add that we watch documentaries. Like there are films coming out of Iran that despite all the hardship that filmmakers face to make these films, but there are some truthful documentaries about Iran that could be also entertaining in some ways to share with like especially young people. Like my film was, I don't know, like the youth really welcomed it, I would say, in different communities. So like there's so many films like mine that have some values, educational values.
I would say that your film and Andy's would be very valuable in classrooms and giving a very firsthand feel for life in Iran.
I would just add that, I think one of the most amazing things today is we have these translation abilities like Google Translate and stuff, and you could literally hold it over a page of Farsi and it can translate it for you. And so, if you have the time and the means and you're still careful because they're not always right, these tools, see if you can get to the original Persian text. And use these tools when possible. I also would just say, like, sorry, be careful. Like, always be aware of where a particular author or think tanker or what a journalist is coming from. Like, what is their background? What is their bias? That doesn't mean what they're saying is not true, but just be aware of it. In analyzing, how seriously you want to take their argument. Because believe me, even to this day, there are people still trying to kind of revise, maybe that's too strong a word, but rethink the 1953 events and what really happened and reframe them for an audience that maybe is more pro-war. So just be aware of that.
I would
Thank you.
second the recommendation from a member of the audience of Stephen Kinzer's book, All the Shah's Men. He's a great reporter and he did a terrific job.
Thank you. And please save the chat. We'll also save the chat so that we can keep track of these resources. We're nearing the end of our time, so I'll offer one more question, but also panelists. We had folks asking about the destruction of cultural spaces in Iran, reactions to the bombing of the school. So folks wondering about images coming out of Iran, lots of curiosity here. So I hope this conversation will continue. But I'll close this with this question from Basit. What does a better Iran mean to you? What significant changes do you hope to see? And if feel free to answer that or any reflections you want to share before we close.
I mean,
I can, yeah, you're gonna have it.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. This is a very personal thing, but like, I do hope one day that we have an Iran that treats its religious minorities better than the Islamic Republic has, and frankly, even the previous monarchical Iran. That's personal, but yeah, I'd like to see that.
I would just say a free Iran from both Islamic Republic and Israel, like in Iran, that historical sites are left there, and a country that we can rely on its resources, natural and human resources, to build our future. Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with Elahe about freeing the country from the Islamic Republic and, Israel and other outside interests. They deserve sovereignty, and there's currently an estimated 2,000 political prisoners, being housed in Eben prison, and they're at extraordinary risk, both from bombing campaigns and from mass executions, sort of under the cloak of the digital blackout. And these are people who could help usher in a better society. And that's something that I thinking about those lives is, I think, extraordinarily important right now to the political prisoners.
Thank you all so much. Tom, anything else you wanted to share before we move to our close?
Just wanted to thank our panelists. It's not the easiest subject to talk about. I really appreciate your participation, and to all of you in the audience who joined us, thank you.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Thank you, I think is what we want to offer to you, Tom, for moderating, to Elahe, Nahal, Andy for sharing the conversation. And folks, please join the chat. We are seeing all your gratitudes and your reflections, and we appreciate that. We hope you'll stay for a moment to answer a short survey. It should take about 2 minutes. It will also appear on your screen after the webinar ends, and we'll be sure to share the recording with everyone. And we hope this is just the start of more conversations and connection. Thank you all so much, and we hope to see you at future Pulitzer Center events. Hope you'll stay in touch with us in our newsletter and join us at the next one. Take care. Thank you again, panelists. Wishing you and your families all the best.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.